Chris Chan has been a crucial part of the internet's history. It's often said that he may be the most documented person to have ever existed, having more than 20 years of his life recorded. Throughout the many years of Chris's story, there have been numerous characters that played a role in his lore. Out of everyone that managed to find a place in his saga, perhaps none were as pivotal as Anthony LoGatto. Anthony is a man that is well known by Christorians. He was one of Chris's most prominent detractors, despite never being acknowledged by him. But he played an important role as Chris's counterpart. While Chris did help define the term lolcow, it predates his rise to internet infamy. On the other hand, Anthony's essence was so powerful that it brought a unique term into existence. That is, A-logging. The Quickie defines the term A-logging as the act of overplaying or exaggerating the negative traits of someone lousy at irrational levels. The term itself is derived from Anthony's name, with A taken from his first and log taken from his last. But what does it actually take for someone to be labeled an A-log? First and most importantly, you need a lolcow. Preferably someone who is disorganized, naive, and socially inept. Then you'll need someone who is equally disorganized, naive, and socially inept, but also loaded with self-righteousness. Once the aspiring A-log takes notice of the lolcow, they will not be able to resist signaling their perceived superiority over them. This culminates in the birth of an A-log as they obsessively criticize the lolcow in an attempt to shield themselves and avoid the same ridicule that their victims get. However, it usually backfires on them as they're sniffed out rather easily. Anthony LoGatto was the embodiment of this concept. Learning his history is the best way to understand the phenomenon of A-logging, and how A-logs can easily turn into lolcows themselves. Anthony LoGatto was born on May 8, 1985 in New York. His mother, Margot LoGatto, knew something was different about Anthony very early on. She sent him to Legacy High School, a private, special education school for students with learning disabilities. Little is known about what his academic experience was like, although it was revealed that he brought his mother to prom as his date, which later fueled speculation that she is the source of his MILF fetish. It's clear that A-log has always been very sexually active, and he makes no attempt at hiding that. He was an avid poster on the website WWOEC. This was an adult fan art site created in the early 2000s where users shared 18+ drawings of characters from children's cartoons. Anthony enthusiastically engaged with others in the forum, having over 500 posts from his account. He was well known on the site until its eventual closure in February of 2016. Anthony was also a writer of erotic fanfiction. Some of his works include a fanfic about my life as a teenage robot, a 17-part series titled The World's Luckiest Guy, and 31 Tricks, 31 Treats, a marathon of erotica where he attempted to post a chapter a day for the month of October in honor of the Halloween season. The most well-known of his writings is The World's Luckiest Guy. The series covers the life of Anthony and his ridiculous amount of sexual encounters. The first part was written in 2002, which would have been during Anthony's teenage years. There is no need to go deep into the story, it's far too graphic to be read aloud anyway, but his fanfics have been sufficiently summarized on his Encyclopedia Dramatica page. There are several key points worth noting. The stories are completely unrealistic and unrelatable. A-log comes off as being completely out of touch with reality. Heaps upon heaps of ego-stroking, self-aggrandizement, and exaggeration to the point where narcissism becomes apparent. A shocking lack of self-awareness and knowing when to shut up, which often leads to A-log divulging amusing and potentially embarrassing personal information about himself without realizing it. Random quirky jokes for comic relief, references to a healthy fertile sperm supply, which seems to imply that A-log has hidden fears about his potency. Women are often maternal figures, sometimes married. It really goes to show how similar A-log was to Chris Chan, but at least Chris attempted to focus on the story in his writings. Anthony just wrote blatant fantasies that would fuel his delusions of grandeur. It's clear that he used Chris as a way to deflect attention from his own insecurities. His first video about him was posted in August of 2009, where he provided commentary on the infamous video of Chris humping his PS3. For 9 minutes, Anthony would make fun of the size of Chris's genitals. This was a typical video when he would talk about Chris Chan. He rarely provided any valuable commentary, mostly repeating how awful Chris was and how much better he was in comparison. Naturally, viewers found this to be extremely boring and downright narcissistic, but Anthony thought it was comedy. He believed that by reviewing a funny video, it didn't matter what you said, you'd be funny too. Anthony did attract viewers to his channel, but not because they enjoyed his commentary. Rather, it was because they laughed at him the same way they laughed at Chris Chan. Some people who were closer to Anthony, like his sister, tried to make him stop posting his videos and leave Chris alone, but he ignored their advice. There were even 2 trolls impersonating Clyde Clash and Blue Spike that attempted to intimidate Anthony and make him stop, which he did for 1 month. And then he was right back hating on Chris as he usually does. He gained attention after asserting that Chris deserved extreme punishments, such as being sent to jail or being put in a mental hospital. Those following Chris began to see Anthony as another potential lolcow. As his popularity grew, more details about his life surfaced, including his love for furry porn and erotic fan fiction. It was becoming very apparent that Anthony was no different than Chris. Eventually, people grew tired of his behavior and hypocrisy, dubbing him Chris Chan 2.0. It was a deserving title. Anthony needed to be put in his place. Many observers noted the similarities that he shared with Chris and took the time to list out all that the two had in common. Both are male. Both are autistic. Both are grown men living with their parents. Both are spoiled and coddled. Both have a complete inability to spot contradictions in their actions. Both are lazy. Both whine about their trolls. Both are paranoid about their trolls. Both fall victim to their trolls. Both refuse to accept responsibility for their actions. Both are extremely socially awkward. Both have an inflated sense of self-importance. Both think they're handsome. And both have compared themselves to God. That's just to list a few. There are many more similarities documented on A-Log's ED page. Anthony dedicated years of his life to obsessively criticizing Chris Chan, only to become exactly what he was making fun of. Eventually, he came to realize that his campaign against Chris was pointless, and he finally made the decision to stop talking about him for good. There's not just one type of A-Log. It manifests itself in many different forms. According to the Quickie, there are 4 main classes of A-Logs: Troll Shielders, Anti-Devotees, Intimidators, and Warriors. Each type has its own distinct traits, but it's possible for an A-Log to display behavioral patterns from multiple groups. Let's examine the unique characteristics that define each class. Troll Shielders. Troll Shielders will A-Log as an attempt to avoid being trolled themselves. It can be thought of as a survival strategy against trolls. The incentive to troll shield arises from an A-Log that subconsciously relates to a lolcow, as they're often autistic and have similar circumstances to those they criticize. Anthony LoGatto was a perfect example of this. He constantly critiqued Chris Chan for things that he was guilty of himself. Troll shielders are pathological projectors, always shining a light on others with the hope that no one shines a light on them. Anti-Devotees. Anti-Devotees are people who view lolcows as an example of what not to be. They closely observe a lolcow, taking mental notes on their behavior and using that information to shape their own actions. In contrast, the average lolcow enjoyer simply views the subject as a source of entertainment, something to laugh at and go on about their day. However, an anti-devotee views it as a learning experience. If you learn right and wrong from lolcows, you might need to take a moment to reflect upon yourself. Intimidators. Intimidators are those who wish ridiculous levels of harm upon a lolcow. They develop a desire to watch them suffer and actively seek to harass or troll their victim. Sometimes they resent lolcows for, quote-unquote, giving autistics a bad name, as they themselves are often on the spectrum and feel personally affected by the negative attention. That's why they'll ignore all factors that may excuse lolcows for their actions, justifying their trolling schemes by claiming that the lolcow is irredeemable and deserving of what they get. Warriors. Warriors believe that attacking lolcows is beneficial to marginalized groups that they're a part of. For example, Chris Chan is both autistic and transgender. Therefore, a warrior will slander Chris while LARPing as a moral crusader for the autistic and transgender communities. This may seem similar to the Intimidator, but there is a key difference in their motives that separates the two. Intimidators target lolcows because they have a personal vendetta against them, while warriors attack lolcows because they feel as if they're a soldier fighting for the greater good. While these groups are clearly defined, the traits are not exclusive to each category. More often than not, an A-log will share characteristics from all 4 classes, as seen with Anthony LoGatto himself. Although the motives for an A-log may differ, they all share one thing in common. They take lolcows far too seriously and fail to understand that they're only meant for entertainment. You should not use a lolcow to boost self-esteem or harass them because they make marginalized groups look bad. 99% of the time, lolcows were dealt a terrible hand that they can't change, and they have to live with that for their entire life. Isn't that punishment enough? Anthony LoGatto brought the term A-log into existence, but he has long since abandoned his extreme A-logging behavior. However, there's been many others who have, at one point or another, stepped in to take his place as the prominent A-log of Chris Chan. Michael Herz. Michael Herz was a man in his 50s who A-logged Chris Chan for much of the mid-2010s. He gained attention for obsessively targeting Chris using sock puppet accounts across various platforms. On Twitter alone, he had 100 profiles dedicated for this purpose. Despite Michael's blatant hatred for Chris and his actions, he had his own questionable past. Kiwi farmers discovered that he was a dedicated furry who had run into legal trouble for shoplifting. It was a clear case of A-log projection. Michael, who was pushing 60 years old, saw himself in Chris, and as a result, became a troll shielder. Using his fake profiles, he would like and respond to his own tweets, making any attempt to slander Chris's image and deter others from interacting with him. Followers of Chris were not happy with this behavior. His accounts were criticized for A-logging, but he ignored the backlash and continued in his crusade. Unfortunately for Michael, his fight was bound for failure right from the beginning. In a post on Kiwi Farms, Michael revealed himself as one of the most prominent Twitter accounts A-logging Chris. Although Kiwi users called him out, he repeatedly denied being the account in question and proceeded to have a borderline meltdown where he insulted the farms as well as its owner, Josh Moon. His poor behavior resulted in Michael receiving his very own thread on the Kiwi Farms, with his case serving as a cautionary example of the potential consequences of A-logging. Isabella Jenke. Isabella Jenke is known for her role in a call where Chris admits to having an affair with his mother. She first connected with Chris when the Prater group commissioned her to create the Chris Chan Sonichu intro animation, after which she maintained contact with him. Their relationship continued, with Bella appearing friendly during conversations, while secretly mocking him and hoping for his downfall behind his back. She described Chris as a fat, overweight and said that he should have been killed in some freak gender reassignment surgery accident. Despite this, Chris decided to open up to her about his personal matters. He told her that he began having sexual relations with an older woman, but he did not reveal who it was until a few weeks later. He built up enough trust with her to reveal that the older woman was, in fact, his own mother. Bella was thrilled to hear this confession because for her, she saw it as her chance to become the greatest troll of all time. She shared this revelation with a select few, intending to keep it a secret as she had bigger plans to expose Chris. However, one of them leaked the evidence to Reddit, causing the news to rapidly spread across the internet. Bella tried to remain anonymous during the leaks, but she hadn't taken the correct precautions to do so. Kiwi Farms users began to gather information to determine who she was, and it didn't take long before her identity was revealed. They didn't just find her docs. They also found evidence of her manipulating Chris, such as messages where she claimed that she hacked into his bank account and stole his money. Ultimately, her plan backfired as people realized that she was actually worse than Chris Chan, and instead of becoming the master troll that she had hoped for, she went down in history as one of his biggest A-logs. Music Biz Marty. Of course, not all A-logs dedicate their efforts to Chris Chan. Music Biz Marty was a major A-log and one of the first trolls of Cyrax. Their relationship began sometime in 2019. Marty took part in some lighthearted trolling of Cyrax, such as convincing him that he was signed to a record label called Bender Boys Records. While their relationship started off on decent terms, things took a turn for the worse after Marty's girlfriend passed away. Cyrax heard this news and decided it would be a perfect time to ask Marty for nude photographs of her, which of course soured their relationship. This likely encouraged Marty to increase the severity of his trolling. He would send food deliveries, air conditioning repairmen, and drug addicts to Cyrax's home. He even sent him broken glass and a firework through the mail. In turn, Cyrax became extremely hostile, but Marty viewed this as a benefit. He was profiting from the live streams talking about Cyrax, so more drama meant more money. In 2023, Marty decided to rent out an Airbnb near Cyrax's home. Cyrax had made physical threats toward Marty, so he wanted to confront the goblin face to face. While many assumed Cyrax would cower at home, he actually showed up, allegedly wielding a hammer. Marty, being significantly larger, easily overpowered him, causing the altercation to last less than a minute. Many found this use of force excessive and unnecessary. After all, Marty drove over 8 hours knowing that he might have to beat up a disabled man who's 4'9". People began to disassociate with Marty. It appeared as if he genuinely hated Cyrax and took pleasure in his downfall. In the end, however, it would be Marty who would fall first. On January 29th, 2024, Music Biz Marty overdosed on fentanyl, passing away at the age of 38. More often than not, a lolcow will outlive an A-log, metaphorically or sometimes literally. It's valuable to observe their stories, as there are recurring patterns that offer important lessons. There is a conception. An idea is planted in someone's mind that they are superior to another person. Their birth occurs the moment they act on that belief, which is often prompted by pride, anger, or greed. Their life is then spent endlessly tormenting a person who is already suffering, and in the end, their death exists as a mark on their name. They are remembered as nothing more than just another A-log. A-logs are regularly warned about their behavior. People point out the potential consequences of their actions, and they choose to ignore them, believing themselves to be invincible. They waste countless hours portraying internet weirdos as villains. What they fail to understand is that there will always be worse people than lolcows. Yet they persist, they choose to threaten or in some cases harm others in real life, disregarding any legal risks that could jeopardize their future. While legal trouble may be the most serious, it's true that it's not all that common. Generally, A-logs don't go that far. It's more likely for them to face repercussions from others online. They put a target on their back and attract trolls when they lash out at any criticism they receive. In turn, they are insulted, humiliated, and almost always doxxed, despite their efforts to stay anonymous. They haven't realized that lolcows become desensitized to the endless stream of insults they receive, making any attempt to bully them pointless. At the end of the day, comparing yourself to the lowest common denominator just to boost your own ego is embarrassing and harms no one but the A-log doing so. Fortunately, there's a way out for those who are poisoned with the A-log mindset. Here's a step-by-step guide on how to avoid being an A-log. Step 1. Humble yourself. Understand that everyone has their own struggle and nobody is perfect, including yourself. Step 2. Stop insulting people. Doing so will only tempt you to relapse back into your old behavior. Step 3. Stop taking everything so seriously. Learn to laugh a little. That's the whole point of lolcows in the first place. Step 4. Be happy. You have very limited time in this world. Do you really want to spend it being angry? Step 5. Possibly the most effective step. Get off the internet. It's that easy. Even if you continue to A-log in real life, you won't have nearly as far of a reach as you would on the internet, saving you from the mass amounts of embarrassment. While it's nice to think that these steps are effective, the truth is, they're not. The harsh reality is, A-logs don't even know that they're A-logging, which means they won't stop until the consequences of their actions have become so severe that it's far too late to turn back. The internet generally views A-logs negatively, which makes sense. They tend to be bitter people who ruin the fun for everyone else. But maybe they play an important role after all. You certainly can't deny the fact that they contribute to the story of lolcows. They become characters themselves that push the narrative further. However, they've caused incredible amounts of problems for people who don't always deserve it, and all in a self-serving attempt to feel better about themselves. A demon is an entity that is attracted to you, yet simultaneously hates you and seeks your destruction. Is it fair to call an A-log a demon? Their victims likely would. But much like lolcows themselves, A-logs struggle with social issues or disabilities of their own. Perhaps they were born to be an A-log. It was their fate from the very start, and there's nothing they could have done to change that. At the end of the day, it should comfort people to know that an A-log's destiny is set in stone, and their demise is inevitable. Thanks for watching.